everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make a slimline card using the Sprigs and Leaves slimline bundle. I'm going to use all the components of this bundle to make a card. Okay, so it comes with stencils and an embossing folder and stamps and a thin cut. All right, so I'm going to begin by using the stencil with the largest openings. We'll use the detail stencil later on, and I've already treated this with some pixie spray so it has some low tack to it. And I'm just going to secure my cardstock down to my Versamat using some repositionable tape runner from Tombow, and we'll get that stencil laid down on top of it. And then I'm going to use some of the Close to My Heart masking tape to further secure it and make sure that I don't get ink over the edges. Okay, so now we're ready to start stenciling. So the purpose of this first ink wash on the stencil is to figure out the positioning of all of the sprigs and leaves. So I'm just going to do a really light wash of sage ink with a blending brush. So I'm just going to go over this stencil very lightly. I just want to know where all of those leaves are on this, going to be on this piece of white daisy. Okay, so I'll pull everything, hang on to that tape because you'll need it again, and then remove the stencil. Okay, so now that I know where all the leaves go, I'm going to do some stamping. So I'm going to flip over my Versamat to use the cushion side for stamping. And then this stamp set has line drawings of all the leaves, the outside lines of each of the leaf bundles, and then it also has a detailed line stamp for the inside of the leaves. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stamp down in pine ink, and then I'll bring in that detail stamp. So if you take the carrier sheet from the stamp set and just kind of hold it over the stamp, you can figure out which one matches up. Okay, so it's that one, and I need to season it. First time I've used it, so just rub it on your arm and it removes the film that's left from production. And we have to do this the first time, and then it's ready to take ink. So I'm going to use rosemary ink for the inside lines. So I'm lining that up, and then we'll get that stamped down. So each of these leaves, there's 2 of each within this stenciled image. So I'm just going to go through and stamp the outsides and the insides. Okay, so we'll pull that stamp and then we'll move on to the next large leaf image. And then I'll speed things up. I'm going to keep everything, all the stamping in the video, but I'm going to speed it up, and I've kind of edited out. There's places where I have to, my head is in the picture because I have to look down over the image to make sure I place it correctly. So I've just sped everything up, and we'll go through with the outside and then the inside. Outside is in pine, inside's in rosemary, and we'll just go through and stamp each one of those images. Really pretty images. This thin cut that's coming up pretty soon, you could cut all of these out and use each of these images for little sprig bundles on a card front, or you can leave it as is like I'm doing. So many options. Okay, so we have all our stamping done, and then I'm going to bring in the detail stencil. Okay, so I'm going to place it down, and then I'll secure it with the masking tape. So I don't want to over ink and get some ink on the edges of that white daisy. And then I'm going to bring sage in again. So I'm doing tone on tone, but this time I'm going really heavy with the ink. So it almost looks like I used two different colors, but it's all in sage. So we have really light wash of sage and then the details in the really dark wash of sage. And it does lighten up a bit as it dries. Really pretty. Okay. All right, so we'll remove that masking tape and the stencil. Get the stencil cleaned up and then we can move on. Okay, so I'm going to bring in some periwinkle cardstock, and I'm using the light side of periwinkle, and I'm going to use the thin cut. So basically I'm going to create a background of periwinkle. So all these leaves and sprigs are going to be on top of the periwinkle background. Going to appear that way. Okay, so when you die cut this, keep all of those bits that you poke out. You can use them on another card. They're beautiful leaves that are cut. So hang on to those. It's a no waste die. And then everything lines up. And it appears as though that periwinkle is the background. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in the embossing folder. All right, so we'll emboss everything. And then it's going to line up further and just pop right in all those spots where the embossed images, they're going to go into those cut spots from the thin cut. Okay. All right, now let's do our sentiment. I have a piece of sapphire. I'm just cutting this down so it's easier to work with. And I'm going to hit it with some anti-static powder. I'm going to white heat emboss. So my sentiment is, it says hello, and it's from the August stamp of the month. And it is called Goodbye Isn't Forever. So I'm stamping that out in white pigment ink, and then I'm going to sprinkle some white detail embossing powder on it, and then we'll heat it up and melt that embossing powder so that white sentiment really pops on that sapphire cardstock. Okay, so we'll heat that up, and then I'm going to cut it down so the sentiment is straight and it's a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to dovetail each end. So just cut vertically in the center and then take each corner to meet that snip and cut your triangle out, and then you have two ends that are dovetailed, and then I'm just going to buff out that anti-static powder and clean it up. Okay, so now we're ready to start putting our card together. So I've found that the easiest way to assemble is start by putting the background piece, the periwinkle piece, on top of the embossed piece so that you can line everything up properly and just pop all those embossed pieces into the openings from the thin cut piece. Get it all lined up, and then you can add the whole panel to your slimline card base. So just going in and adding a little bit more glue with some of those pieces that are coming up. Make sure it's all glued down properly, and then we can add the whole panel. And I like to use wet glue so that I don't press out any of that embossing. Sometimes you can do that when you're running your tape runner. Okay, then I'll add that hello sentiment with some foam tape. And I'm going to keep it simple so that that stamping and all of the sprigs and leaves really stand out and pop. However, I do need to add some bling. So I've got these crystals that are from the Jewels collection from Buttons Galore More. I'm going to scatter a whole bunch of those around. So I've used all of the components from the bundle. I'll put all of the information about the supplies that I use with links in the description below. You can do a little shopping. The bundle is still available. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. And then you'll be able to find all of my videos. And thanks for watching.